So how capable really is the .277 Fury or the 6.8 by 51 going to be? Now, obviously, you know, a lot of the numbers are still behind closed doors. We don't have access to those yet, but they've put out enough information to where you can pretty much surmise what's going to happen. First things first, there is this idea it's going to be really good at penetrating body armor. I did a whole bunch of testing on this, like real-world testing against real body armor. To really significantly make a difference, you need 3,400 feet per second. That's where the magic starts really happening. It doesn't hit that amount. It is not going to penetrate armor better than any other cartridge, unless, of course, they found some sort of supply of unitanium, and they're going to make the projectiles out of that. That would be a different story, but you could make all the rest of the cartridges projectiles out of that as well. So, 89.
Here is our AP4 shot. We are 2 inches from the AP3. What do you guys think? Uh-oh. It's hard to see, but there is a penetration there. Here's the gel block.
An actual advantage that the cartridge has itself, short of putting some sort of like special AP tip on there, there's none at all. Because it falls short of 3,400 feet per second, you can get that with just about any cartridge, like the M80A1, 5.56, so there's no real advantage there. So that's off the table. How will it perform as a DMR? Because I truly think that's what the rifle's going to do, like the M14, M110. So I pulled up some numbers here. What are we looking at? I'm going to compare it against the M110. Now, it's pointless to talk about any numbers closer than 300 yards because the M16 puts both those rifles to shame. It does what they can do: lighter, faster, controllable full auto. The magic number with ballistics is 2,200 feet per second. Federal ammunition guy, take it away.
Temporary wound cavity, as we expand and recover from, is different when projectiles hit at greater than 2,200 feet a second. At that point, it appears we have surpassed the elasticity capability of human tissue, and that temporary wound cavity begins tearing at its limits and margins and becomes the permanent wound cavity, which also is the conclusion why people who are center punched with rifle projectiles typically succumb much quicker than people who are hit with handgun projectiles. The byproduct of that also seems that when a rifle projectile at those velocities bypasses an organ, you will still have organic damage, whereas a handgun projectile needs to directly hit a vital organ to do organic damage.
So, we're not going to look at those numbers inside of 300, so what does it do at 400 yards? Well, the M110 only has 2,100 feet per second. The XM-5 would have 2,351. So it is definitely taking a huge advantage over the M110 at 400 yards. What about 500 yards? Now they're both below 2,200 feet per second. So now that you're not going to get the hydraulic shock and the expansion of tissue, you're looking at kinetic energy, because remember, there's still a chance that at 500 yards your bullet will pass through, so you want as much as possible to deliver as much as possible into the target. So at 500 yards, your M110 shooting M180 ball, and your XM5 shooting 6.8 by 51. For feet per second, you're looking at 19, roughly, on the M80 ball out of the M110, and you're looking at 2182 out of the XM5, putting just about an extra 400 pounds of kinetic energy in the target over the M110. Now you might be asking, well, the XM5 has a 16-inch barrel, and the M110 has a 20-inch barrel. How can you compare that? Because that's the ammunition you would shoot in those rifles. Now I understand the M110 would have more of a marksman round. I know that doesn't make sense. It's really hard to compute. But BC really doesn't come into play until those real extreme ranges. Yeah, it would have an advantage in BC over here, but the drop is going to be so much more because the M80 ball, the M80A1 gets to their target quicker. So you have a flatter trajectory. So it gives it an advantage. Yes, you don't have the high BC, so you're going to have to fight wind and stuff like that. But they're very similar between the two ammunition, so that's why I picked it. And again, like I said, for the barrel length, well, that's the rifles that they shoot. It doesn't really matter if this has an advantage with a 20-inch barrel. That's what the gun is. I'm not going to take a hacksaw and chop off a bunch of my barrel just to make it fair. No, I'm going to use the gun that it's got. So this will definitely have an advantage over weight, but this will have an advantage over barrel length. So at 600 yards, The M110, you're only looking at 862 foot-pounds of energy. The XM-5, you're looking at 1225. Now here's where it starts getting interesting. So at 500 yards, the drop on the M110, shooting the M180, or the M80, and then the XM5. Now the BC isn't out on exactly what projectile it's using. I gave this a very generous BC. So the M110 at 500 yards, the total drop, so if you totally screw up your range call and you don't put enough height on there, the drop is 44.5 inches, so you will still hit. The XM5, you're looking at 38 and some change, still will hit. Just pointing directly at the target, not doing any compensation for elevation whatsoever. Now at 600 yards, the M110, you're looking at 74.4. Notice it's way above my head. So if you don't start doing adjustments or you call your range wrong, you're going to be shooting way down into the dirt because it's way up here. But the XM5 is 63 inches. So at 600 yards, with the XM5, even if you totally screw up your range call and you don't throw enough elevation on it, like let's say you call it at 400 yards, it doesn't matter. Because doing zero correction, you're still hitting the target. But if you do like a shit range call, well now you're definitely on the target. Now I don't know if it's true, but the people that make the ASCC reticle, they say most of the time when people miss the target is because they make a bad range call, and they shoot above or below the target. So the flatter shooting the projectile is, the higher marksmanship points that somebody's going to get. So at 700 yards, I mean, now they're both like way into the dirt, but the difference between the two, the XM5 has a 20-inch advantage. It is this much less drop at 700 yards. Now, again, the military will probably use some projectile that's got crap BC, and this will probably be less of a difference, but with a good BC, 20 inches difference. That's crazy. At 800 yards, we're looking at a 32-inch difference. This is how much better the XM5 would be over the M110. Now when it comes to kinetic energy, at 800 yards, the M110 you're looking at 539 foot-pounds of energy. The XM5 you're looking at 888 foot-pounds of energy. Yeah, these are pretty negligible. I mean, they're damn near the same, but there is definitely an advantage with the XM5. Well, what about the rifles themselves? So the M110, you have an 18x scope. The rifle itself weighs 9 pounds. With everything on it, bipod, scope, silencer, the whole 9 yards. I'm getting numbers on the internet because obviously it would make a difference what scope you're running and what silencer you're running, what bipod you're running. Anywhere between 13.89 up to 17 pounds. Alright, the XM5, you're looking at an 8x scope. So you're definitely at a disadvantage there. Now, not so much for hitting the target, but target identification. The rifle itself, you're looking at 8.38 pounds. Not too bad. So it does have an advantage over the M110 by almost 3/4 of a pound. So that's not that bad at all. With the can added on top of there, now you're up to 9.84 pounds. Now you got to add on your scope, which is 2.5 pounds, and a loaded magazine, which is 1.4 pounds, giving you an overall weight of 13.74 pounds. So even in the best case scenario with the M110, you're still almost a 1/4 pound lighter with the XM5. But I feel the M110 would make a better like scout sniper rifle, where the XM5 would make a better DMR rifle over the M110, just because it's a lighter rifle. Yeah, you don't have the big scope, but who really cares? You're not trying to necessarily identify a target, you're just trying to pick off a target that you can't use artillery on. So, do I think the XM5 will replace the 110? Probably not, because that still has a nice place in the scout sniper role. Do I think it would replace the M110 as a DMR? Almost certainly. Do I think it will replace the M14 as a DMR? Oh yeah. The M14 has accuracy problems and it's an open receiver. So they also have reliability issues should the rifle fall in the mud, dust, snow, anything like that. Do I think the XM5 would replace the SCAR as a DMR? Maybe. I mean, the SCAR's just really not suited very well as a DMR. It can do the job, it's plenty accurate, but just how the rifle's set up, it just doesn't work well. It's got that side charging handle, it just doesn't make a good DMR. It's more of an all-purpose battle rifle. Do I think the XM-5 will replace the M4 or M16? No. It doesn't suit that role at all. The M16, M4 just walk both these rifles when you're inside of 300 yards. And that's where it really matters, because you can't call an air support or anything. You want the rifle to be awesome in there, like if you're in a house or something like that. But anyway, appreciate you watching my video. If you'd like to help support the channel, I always got my Patreon. Definitely have affiliate links in the description down below. Just by clicking on those links, even if you don't purchase what that particular link is for, just clicking on it and doing the Amazon shopping you were already going to do anyway, another kickback for it because you came there off my channel. And all the people that donated to the Givesendgo, we got it up to 34% now, man. That's pretty awesome. Thank you. I appreciate all your guys' support. Don't forget to subscribe.